The Zodiac Killer murders. Northern California was terrorized for many years by the seemingly random brutal murders of 5 people in the Bay Area of California in 1968 and 1969, as well as a series of cryptic messages taunting their killer. The self-proclaimed Zodiac Killer sent local newspapers a 3-part coded message explaining his motive for the killings in 1969, and in a separate letter to the editor suggested his identity was buried within an elaborate cipher message. The killer's twisted motive was indeed revealed in the decoded message, but his identity remains a mystery. Screenwriters, authors, true crime enthusiasts, forensic scientists, and, of course, law enforcement are still captivated by the Zodiac Killer's elaborate methods of communicating with the public and his pursuers, as well as the fact that the murders have not been solved. Narrator: California's North. Late 1960s. A quiet night, a parked car, and then gunshots that broke the silence. One of the most terrifying mysteries in American history grew out of what began as a series of brutal attacks. Because this murderer did more than just kill people. He wanted to be noticed. He wrote to newspapers and letters. He used symbols and messages that were hidden. And he gave himself a name the world would never forget: the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac's identity remains a mystery even today, more than 50 years later. No arrests. In court, no confession was established. Merely hints, theories, and fear that persists today. The murderer who turned the crime into a game is the subject of this account. The first attack. On December 20th, 1968, 2 teenagers, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, parked near Lake Herman Road in California. It was supposed to be a regular night out with the guys. However, prior to midnight, someone approached their vehicle. Both teenagers were shot moments later. The police had very little evidence. No witnesses. No obvious suspect. At first, the police thought it was a one-off incident. They were wrong. The letters begin. In 1969, the self-described Zodiac Killer sent 3 parts of a coded message to local newspapers explaining his motivation for the killings. In a separate letter to the editor, he suggested that his identity was hidden within a complex cipher message. The killer's twisted motive was indeed revealed in the decoded message, but his identity remains a mystery. Screenwriters, authors, true crime enthusiasts, forensic scientists, and, of course, law enforcement are still captivated by the Zodiac Killer's elaborate methods of communicating with the public and his pursuers, as well as the fact that the murders have not been solved. Another young couple was attacked at Blue Rock Springs Park months later. This time, one victim survived. The phone call followed. A man calmly contacted police and claimed responsibility for both attacks. But the real horror began weeks later. 3 newspapers received nearly identical letters from someone calling himself the Zodiac. Inside were coded messages filled with strange symbols. If the letters weren't published on the front page, the killer would kill again. America was aghast. A murderer who wanted notoriety, the FBI's role in 1969, much as it is today, was to support local law enforcement in their investigations. In the Zodiac Killer case, correspondence between law enforcement agencies in Northern California and forensic experts at the FBI's laboratory, in what was then called the Technical Evaluation Unit, shows our efforts to analyze handwriting samples and lift latent fingerprints from the letters and envelopes sent by the purported killer. A complicated cipher that used more than 50 shapes and symbols to represent the 26 letters of the alphabet was also deciphered by FBI cryptanalysts, or codebreakers. Ultimately, the code was made public and broken by 2 university professors. But then, as now, the case illustrates the extent of partnerships between the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. Here's a look at just some of the ways we support our partners in investigations. Behavioral analysis. When leads in their criminal cases become stale or fuzzy, local police turn to the FBI profilers or behavioral analysts at the FBI laboratory for assistance and guidance. Discover more about it. Unlike most killers who hide in the shadows, Zodiac wanted to be seen. He made fun of investigators. He threatened school buses. He boasted about his wrongdoings. A symbol that became well known in one of his most chilling letters was a circle with a cross through it. The sign of the zodiac. Fear quickly spread throughout California. People avoided going out at night. Parents feared for their children. National headlines appeared for each new letter. And yet, police still had no idea who he was. The unsolved ciphers. The codes of the zodiac captivated amateur and professional cryptographers alike. One cipher was solved quickly. For decades, another mystery remained unsolved. The messages were cracked by people all over the world. Some people thought the codes showed his identity. Others thought the killer just liked to manipulate people. In 2020, one of the famous ciphers was finally decoded by a team of private citizens. But even then, his name was not mentioned in the message. The enigma persisted. Suspects. Behavioral analysis. When leads in their criminal cases become stale or fuzzy, local police turn to the FBI profilers or behavioral analysts at the FBI laboratory for assistance and guidance. Discover more about it. Analysis of fingerprints. The fingerprints and criminal history information for more than 47 million subjects are stored in our integrated automated fingerprint identification system, which is the world's largest biometric database. Discover more about it. Criminal background checks. The FBI's massive computerized database of fingerprints, mugshots, criminal records, and information about parole and probation is connected to more than 90,000 agencies. At our West Virginia Criminal Justice Information Services facility, we manage the host computer. Discover more about it. Cryptanalysis. At the FBI laboratory, codebreakers look at and figure out the codes that are used in crimes like kidnapping, gang communications, espionage, and terrorism. Read more about it. Over the years, dozens of suspects emerged. One of the most discussed was Arthur Leigh Allen, a man investigated heavily by police. Some of the details looked suspicious, but the evidence never fully matched. Fingerprints didn't conclusively connect him. The DNA results remained uncertain. As a result, the case remained open. Even today, investigators and internet communities continue debating who the Zodiac truly was. Ending. There was more to the Zodiac Killer case than just a murder investigation. It became an obsession with culture. Books, movies, documentaries, thousands of theories online. But behind the mystery were real victims and grieving families whose questions were never answered. What was the Zodiac? How many people actually perished? And could the truth still be hidden somewhere in the evidence? Maybe one day, we'll finally know. Or perhaps the Zodiac Killer will continue to be one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history. Subscribe. Much remains mysterious about the Zodiac case, not least the issue of when the crime stopped. Crime writer Robert Graysmith argued that the Zodiac Killer remained active through the 1980s and murdered dozens more people, though this view is controversial. During the 1990s, several investigators claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer. The suspect most often cited was Arthur Leigh Allen, 1933-92, of Vallejo, California. Schoolteacher who had been institutionalized in 1975 for child molestation, though his identification with the Zodiac Killer has never been substantiated. In 2021, a group of investigators claimed that Gary Francis Post, a house painter who died in 2018, was the killer. The offered evidence included several witnesses who claimed Post had admitted to the murders and scars on his forehead that matched witness descriptions of the killer. However, law enforcement officials largely dismissed the claim, and the FBI investigation remains ongoing. Criminal background checks. More than 90,000 agencies are connected to the FBI's massive computerized database of fingerprints, mugshots, crime records, and parole and probation information. We run the host computer at our Criminal Justice Information Services facility in West Virginia. Cryptanalysis. Codebreakers at the FBI laboratory analyze and decipher codes used in the commission of crimes, including kidnappings, gang communications, espionage, and terrorism. There was more to the Zodiac Killer case than just a murder investigation. It became an obsession with culture. Books, movies, documentaries, thousands of theories online. But behind the mystery were real victims and grieving families whose questions were never answered. What was the Zodiac? How many people actually perished? And could the truth still be hidden somewhere in the evidence? Maybe one day, we'll finally know. Or perhaps the Zodiac Killer will continue to be one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history. Subscribe to DJ Codessa's YouTube channel to receive more true crime and unsolved mysteries if you enjoyed this video. Also, let me know in the comments, do you think the Zodiac Killer's identity will ever be discovered?